iOS 26.4 is coming soon with a massive fix, and plus there is a first of its kind software update this week. Apple just announced a surprise new product. We have proof that Tim Cook is not retiring this year, how Apple is secretly winning the AI wars, and much more, all in today's episode of Apple Weekly. Okay, so let's start by talking about the surprise new Apple product that launched this week. So we were not expecting this because we had no rumors or really nothing indicating that this product was coming, and that is the AirPods Max 2. Yes, Apple finally updated the AirPods Max with a second generation. Of course, we had the USB-C update a while back, but this is the true second generation of AirPods Max, and they look pretty much the exact same. Same colors, same design, same $550 price tag. The only thing that's really changed is internally because we have that H2 chip inside, which is actually a big upgrade because this will get you 1.5 times more active noise cancellation, improved transparency mode, adaptive EQ. We have that camera remote feature, which is where you press on the crown to take a picture with your phone. And of course, all the other features that are enabled with the H2 chip like we saw in the AirPods Pro 2. But there is bad news about the AirPods Max 2, and that is the fact that they are not compatible with the Apple polishing cloth. I know, that's a deal breaker for some of you out there. But anyways, this thing goes up for pre-order next week. So the AirPods Max 2 go up for pre-order next week, not the polishing cloth, and they will be available in early April. Now let's talk about how Apple is secretly winning the AI wars, and pretty much nobody is talking about it because we just got a new report this week from the Wall Street Journal that shows that Apple made $900 million from AI apps in 2025 thanks to their revenue cut, and ChatGPT made up 75% of that, by the way, but they're on track for $1 billion in 2026 from these AI apps just existing on the App Store. But that's not the only way that Apple's winning, because if you take a look at Apple's competitors, like the big tech companies like Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and Meta, they're all spending insane amounts of money trying to win AI. So they're spending between $10 to $40 billion with a B per quarter on data centers, chips, infrastructure, all of that. Meanwhile, Apple is spending literally 10 times less than every one of those competitors. And plus, Apple is actually profiting off of AI right now, which most of these companies out there are spending so much money on CapEx, but they're not actually making profit, or not much profit at all, unlike Apple, which of course it's in services, so it is going to be very high margin. But this is pretty crazy, and it just, shows Apple's kind of secret, business model surrounding AI. They're really owning where the AI is happening instead of making the best AI out there. Now, of course, keep in mind, Apple is building their own, generative AI models in the background. They're just very slow to adopt this, but Apple is taking the approach they always take, where they're not spending all this money. They're not rushing to be the best and the fastest. They're taking their time with it. So pretty crazy. And these AI wars are going to be lasting for decades to come. So it will be very interesting to see where Apple is at in 5 years time from now, because we know that they're currently working with Google to have Google Gemini power part of this new and improved Siri. But will Apple have it all, under control on their own in 5 years from now? And they won't need help from Google Gemini. That's yet to be determined, but it's going to be very interesting to see, especially with Apple spending 10 times less, on AI infrastructure than everybody else at this point. Okay, so now let's talk about the MacBook Neo. This is the new $500 to $600 MacBook that just recently came out, and it's had the whole internet going absolutely crazy because it's powered by an iPhone chip. Everybody thought it was going to be this weak computer, but it turns out it's actually an amazing computer with amazing performance. And as a testament to how good the product is, Tim Cook actually revealed this over on X. He just said, Mac just had its best launch week ever for first-time Mac customers. We love seeing the enthusiasm. So Apple just had its best week ever for first-time Mac customers, and that is undoubtedly because of the MacBook Neo. So we don't have official sales numbers yet, but this proves that it is selling like actual hotcakes, just like everybody assumed that it would. And I would also venture to guess that this record is like way up here, whereas second place, Apple's previous record, is way down here. I would imagine that Apple absolutely crushed the previous record for first time Mac users in a week. And there's something else that's really good about the MacBook Neo that not a lot of people are talking about, and that is the fact that it is the most repairable Mac in the past 14 years. And this was reported on by iFixit, and they're showing that the battery inside the MacBook Neo is screwed in instead of being glued in with adhesive, which is really good for repairability. Also, the parts like the speakers, the ports, and the trackpad are all easy to access, and the layout inside just actually makes sense, and it's much easier to repair than previous Macs. And this makes sense because if you think about the MacBook Neo, a lot of people buying these are going to be schools. Schools are going to be buying up the MacBook Neo, and they usually prefer to repair their products when they break instead of buying new ones. So it makes a lot of sense for the repairability of the MacBook Neo here as well. At this point, there's really nothing bad you can say about the MacBook Neo. Like, there's really just not. Like, yeah, you can say things about the trackpad, you could say things about the performance not being the best, the RAM 8 gigs, but for the price and everything else that goes into it, I mean, there's really, I have a hard time seeing how anybody could say anything bad about the MacBook Neo. It's really just a home run product, in my opinion. It's the first time I felt this strongly about an Apple product in quite some time. And when I say strongly, I mean where it's just like a no-brainer to buy for like the majority of people out there who need a MacBook for the first time. So now let's go from cheap to something that's going to be very expensive, and that is the iPhone Fold, because we just got a report that the displays for the iPhone Fold are nearing mass production. And this comes from Instant Digital. He says that Samsung Display is set to begin mass production of OLED panels for the first foldable iPhone in May. Now, Fixed Focus Digital, also on Weibo, claimed that the iPhone Fold's screen may be flatter than many of the existing foldable devices that are currently on the market, which suggests that Apple has largely solved the crease problem. Now, of course, we all expected Apple to be the first or one of the first out there with a creaseless display, but now, of course, you guys have seen that we've seen several manufacturers have a fully creaseless foldable. So Apple will definitely not be the first, but it is interesting to see that that is definitely going to happen. We're definitely going to have a creaseless display for the iPhone Fold. Now, also in a research note for Barclays, Apple analyst Tim Long said this: shipments of the iPhone Fold will likely begin in December this year, a few months after the iPhone 18 Pro and iPhone 18 Pro Max launch in September. And he also said that Apple plans to release two other devices alongside the iPhone 18 base model in March next year, including a lower-end iPhone 18e and either an iPhone 18 Plus or iPhone Air 2. So there's a few things to unpack here. Number one, iPhone Fold in December. That sounds very familiar because we saw that with the iPhone 10. I believe it was in December, sometime around there, much later in the year for the iPhone 10, whereas the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus at the time launched in September. So we could be seeing something similar where we get the Pro and Pro Max models in September like usual, and then we have to wait until December to get the iPhone Fold. So maybe Apple will have a separate event for that. Maybe they'll just announce it at the iPhone event and it launches later. We'll have to see. But it is also interesting to note that we're expecting to see the base models and plus the Plus model and the Air model in March of the previous year. So that's a pretty wide gap there between the base model and the Pros. And that's apparently how Apple's schedule is going to be from here on out, at least for the foreseeable future. Now let's talk about Tim Cook here, because there's been several rumors over the past several months that have talked about how Tim Cook is going to be retiring in 2026. Everybody was, confident that he was going to be stepping down or at least stepping away from CEO position, but that doesn't appear to be the case. And this comes from Tim Cook's mouth himself. So he was on Good Morning America this week and he told viewers that retirement talk is nothing more than a rumor. So when he was asked about reports that he was preparing to step down, he told ABC, "No, I didn't say that. I haven't said that. I love what I do deeply. 28 years ago, I walked into Apple and I've loved every day of it since. I can't imagine life without Apple." Now, of course, it's easy to say that those are just rumors and he never said that, and he actually does end up stepping down later this year, but it seems like Tim Cook is not going anywhere, at least not in 2026. Now, is he going to be here until 2030? I don't know about that. It's probably coming in the next few years, but it seems like right now, 2026 is not on the table for Tim Cook to retire or to step down as CEO. Now, let's talk about some really good news for myself and any video editor out there who uses Final Cut Pro. And that's because Apple just recently acquired Motion VFX, which is a Final Cut plugin company. And it's not just any plugin company. This is like the premier, the gold standard for third-party plugins for Final Cut Pro. Marquez uses them. Pretty much everybody on YouTube uses Motion VFX when you see the different graphics, the different titles, transitions. Pretty much most people, most tech reviewers especially, do use Motion VFX to get those effects in their videos. So it's pretty interesting here. And Motion VFX said this on their website: "We are extremely excited to share that Motion VFX is joining the Apple team to continue to empower creators and editors to do their best work." And Motion VFX had 70 employees, and they are all joining Apple now as part of this acquisition. Now, we don't know for sure if this means that Motion VFX is going to exist inside of Final Cut Pro, maybe as a separate bundle that you have to pay for in the Creative Studio. We're not sure if that's going to be the case, or if Apple's just going to implement this and completely shut down Motion VFX. We don't really know what's next. I really hope that Motion VFX does not get shut down because of Apple acquiring them and their employees, but we'll have to wait and see on that. But this could be good news to make Final Cut Pro much better, or it could be really terrible news because motion VFX could just cease to exist after this. But regardless, if you are a Final Cut Pro video editor, this is big, big news. Now I have a question for you. What's the most amount of money you would ever spend on a MagSafe charger? That's just a charger that goes on your desk or your bedside to charge like your Apple Watch and your iPhone. Well, what's the most amount of money you'd spend? $100, $200, maybe $300 if you have a lot of extra money sitting around? What about $5,500? And that's because Hermes is actually selling a MagSafe charger for $5,500. So this is the Paddock Duo charger in gold Swift calfskin. So it wirelessly charges 2 devices, and ironically, it does not include the 20-watt power brick or a USB-C cord. You literally just get the MagSafe charger, and that's it for $5,500 after fees. That is insane. So if you are somebody out there who is buying that, I would love to see an unboxing of a $5,500 MagSafe charger, but that is insane. Okay, so now let's move over to our iPhone here. We're going to talk about iOS 26.4 and that secret update that Apple pushed out this week as well here in a moment. But I first want to talk about the fact that if you're into sports, you can now view the men's NCAA tournament bracket, the March Madness bracket, in the Apple Sports application. So you should see that up there. If not, you can get to it from the menu, and you can see that you do have a live, real-time view of the bracket right here of the tournament, and you can see all the scores and everything right there in a really nice view. So that's something you should definitely check out if you do have the sports application and you're into March Madness. Now, speaking of sports, we also have to talk about F1 because, as you guys know, Apple has exclusive rights to F1 right now and for the next 5 years. And so they're going to be streaming everything on Apple TV. And it looks like that's been a massive hit because they claim that F1 viewership is up this season over ESPN. So Apple's senior VP of services, Eddie Q, said that it's a huge win for the company because he told the Hollywood Reporter that viewership for the Australian Grand Prix, the first race of the season, was up year over year compared to the 2025 race, which aired on ESPN. He said this: the 2026 Formula One season on Apple TV is off to a strong start, with fans responding positively and viewership up year over year for the first weekend, exceeding both F1 and Apple expectations. And I can attest to that because I myself also found it very easy to tune in and watch the F1 races because of the fact that it was on Apple TV. So that is amazing, and it's really good to see that it's doing well because that means that it may continue even after this 5-year partnership. Now, if you are really into racing and cars, you would know about the game called iRacing, and this game is actually coming to the Apple Vision Pro very soon. So iRacing put out a statement saying this: iRacing is pleased to share that through a collaboration with Apple and NVIDIA, the world's premier motorsport simulation will be available on Apple Vision Pro later this spring with the release of visionOS 26.4 and NVIDIA's Cloud XR 6.0 streaming platform. So if you're somebody who's done sim racing using iRacing and you happen to have a Vision Pro, this is pretty big news for you guys. I'm not entirely sure how it's going to work and if you're going to have a steering wheel or what, but it is pretty cool to see that. And they did also mention that it's going to come with visionOS 26.4, which could be out as early as next week. Now, we should also talk about Google Maps because I am personally an Apple Maps user, but Google Maps just launched a new feature that's kind of game-changing for a Maps application, and that's the fact that they just implemented Gemini into Google Maps. And it's pretty cool because you can see right up here, we now have Ask Maps. So if you tap on that, you can see that it's kind of built in right here. So if I just go with something right here like cozy date night ideas, take a look at this. It's going to search the area and give me some ideas using Gemini inside of the Maps application, which is pretty crazy. Or I can get really specific and ask a question like this: is there a public tennis court with lights that I can play on tonight at 10 p.m.? And it's going to search the area and tell me if there's a public tennis court with lights on. So look at that. It gives me multiple options along with the lights, availability, the cost, the directions, how long it's going to take, all of that right here because Gemini is built in and we have this new Ask Maps feature. That is a huge deal. And that's honestly going to be a reason that people use Google Maps over, Apple Maps or Waze. Of course, it's not going to be something you use on a daily basis, but it is really cool to have when you do need it. Okay, so now let's talk about iOS 26.4 because we just got the RC or release candidate build earlier this week, and we have a pretty massive fix in this update. So if you guys watched my RC video, you already know about this, but take a look at this last bullet point here underneath of the list of enhancements in iOS 26.4. It says improved keyboard accuracy when typing quickly. That is a massive deal because for the past several months, really since iOS 26.0, I've had non-stop questions and complaints about the keyboard being broken, specifically when you're typing really fast and your keyboard will miss a key, and then that's going to mess up autocorrect and everything else because it missed one of those keys that you typed in. So that has been officially fixed. This is the first time Apple has mentioned a fix for the keyboard in all of iOS 26. So it's a pretty big deal that that has been fixed here. And then of course we have the other changes like the new emojis, the freeform changes, purchase sharing. You can now have a separate payment for each person in that family. You have the Apple Music changes, accessibility, and more. If you want to see more about that, just watch my iOS 26.4 RC video. And of course, I will have my full official video on 26.4 outlining all the changes when that does get released, which should be next week. And I should also give you an update on the performance of iOS 26.4. And I have to say that the RC build is very smooth. As you guys know, if you watch my videos, I had a lot of issues. I had a lot of complaints in the first few betas of 26.4, but now on the RC build, now that I've been using it on my main device and my test device here for the past few days, it's really solid. Like performance is great. Battery life is great. Battery life is finally great. It was really bad on the first couple of betas, but you can see I'm sitting at 76% right now. Not too sure what I started the screen recording with. You guys will have to tell me, but so far performance, battery life, feels great. Okay, so let's talk about when to expect that final build of iOS 26.4. And I would expect to see that as early as Monday, March 23rd. So typically after the RC releases, we see the final build within, I'd say 5 to 10 days. Usually between the 6 to 8 day mark is usually when we see it. So I would guess that between the 23rd and the 25th is most likely. Now the 25th would be an exact week from the RC, which is what Apple likes to do. Also, that is the day of the AirPods Max pre-order. So could those be, related? Could they be correlated? Maybe, maybe not, but we should be seeing 26.4 next week. And then of course we do have the iOS 26.5 betas, which will kick off shortly after the release of 26.4. And those could very well include a part of the new Siri that's powered by Gemini. Oh, and we have to talk about that secret iPhone update that just launched this week, that was just released this week. It's been called secret, it's been called hidden, but if you guys watch my channel, you probably know, about this. So if you go into your settings and go down to privacy and security, and then scroll down all the way near the bottom, we will have this section where it says background security improvements, BSI. And if you have this set to automatically install and you were on 26.3.1, you would have received a 26.3.1a update, which was just a security update, a BSI. And keep in mind, this is the feature that replaced the rapid security response updates, which we really never got much of at all. Like I feel like this feature has been super underutilized, but this week we finally saw an update go through this BSI segment, this background security improvement segment, and you do have to go in here and make sure it's on to get that update. And if you're wondering why this update was pushed out, well, it's because it patched a WebKit vulnerability that could allow maliciously crafted web content to bypass same origin policy. So that has been fixed after you update this, and if you are on the 26.4 betas, this will most likely be resolved in the RC or the final release. And then finally, we have another crazy AirTag story, and this one's pretty insane, especially the video. So this time in Wisconsin, an Instacart driver and her boyfriend stopped at a Pick and Save store to grab an order. They both went inside and left their car running in the parking lot. Well, in that short moment, someone jumped in and stole the car. Now, at first, it seemed like it was gone for good, but they remembered that there was an AirTag hidden inside the car. So, of course, they did what everybody would do. They opened up the Find My application, they got the location, and instead of waiting around or calling the police, they just went straight to where the car was pinging. And when they got there, they spotted the stolen car just sitting at an intersection with the thief still inside. He was like at a light. So they did not hesitate. They both ran up to the car. The man went to the driver's side. The woman who was driving at the time, she went to the passenger side, and they're both just trying to get the car back. But this is where things got insane because the driver hit the gas and he started going in circles in the middle of an intersection while the boyfriend was halfway in the car trying to stop him and pull him out of the car. And in all that chaos, the car even crashed into a city bus, but somehow the man managed to pull the driver out and a fight broke out right there in the street. but the suspect eventually broke free and ran off. But during that struggle, the boyfriend managed to grab the thief's ID straight out of his pocket before the escape. He stole his ID, and that ended up being the key to everything, because the next day, that same guy showed up at a hospital claiming that he had been assaulted, but a nurse recognized him from the incident and police quickly connected everything. And so he was later charged with multiple crimes, including recklessly endangering safety and taking a vehicle without consent. So that is insane, and without that AirTag, none of this would have been possible. We also wouldn't have this crazy video to watch. Now, luckily nobody got hurt, so we could say it's for entertainment, but yeah, pretty crazy that if they didn't have an AirTag in there, who knows if they would have ever seen that car again. So anyways, guys, that is it for this week's episode of Apple Weekly. Hope you guys enjoyed the return. Again, last week I gave you a warning. I did not have an Apple Weekly episode because I was inundated with all the new Apple products. I still kind of am. I'm still working on those videos, but hope you guys can understand that. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. As always, if you did, let me know your thoughts about any of the stories down in the comment section below. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.